Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. In fact, I think you invited the Education Academy of EAAE, and I think this link is really very fundamental. So I think it's very important to meet each other and to join and share insights. I also think that before I can answer the questions which were put forward, I first have to point out some specificities of each field. And for this reason, I added a subtitle, which is, I will talk about education, research, and practice, maybe as an undivided continuum, but nevertheless, I think it are distinct fields. And I think it's important to know the features of each field, because if we are to get in touch, we have to know features, difficulties, obstacles to overwin, to overcome. So together with the team of dedicated colleagues, and some of them are here today, I coordinate the EAAE Education Academy, education being one of the pillars of the association next to research and advocacy. The Education Academy wants to be a platform and a think tank to reach and share insights and to take positions. So through different workshops, we explore three main themes, which are the changing roles of the architect, roots and traditions of institutions and the meaning of them in today's situations, and pedagogies. But of course, it's all about the connection between teaching and practice. And today I will focus on an issue which should be the link between those two, but in some cases it rather is a complication or even a rupture, and I think we have to overcome these obstacles and difficulties. Merlijn Hurks opens his book about the emergence of the building industry in 14th and 15th century in the Low Countries with two iconic pictures. The first shows a statue of Pieter Appelmans in front of the Antwerp Cathedral, the icon of the craftsman at work involved in the very act of building. In contrast, the other picture shows Brunelleschi, nicely dressed, sitting, all being with clothes not most appropriate and convenient for accessing a building site. The Italian architect is looking slightly upwards to the sky. In best case, he is watching his Florentine dome, but probably he is practicing the act of conceptual thinking. It was exactly at the moment when these two profiles coexisted that pivotal changes took place. Architecture at the time was acknowledged as an important partner to cope and support the fast-changing societal conditions of that time. Moreover, the new architecture was not only criticizing and questioning the actual situation, but it was also providing concrete and physical alternatives which would make it possible to live that new life. Also today, society is facing fast changes. And it seems obvious that architectural research then is indispensable. The EAAE Charter on Architectural Research explains this need, and I only quote the second paragraph. Architecture is facing challenges of climate change, globalization, urbanization, and social transformation that necessitate vital research. In parallel, the horizons of architectural experimentation are expanding rapidly with the development of new technologies and media. If we are to understand, explain, anticipate, and influence the consequences of these changes, research is essential. Moreover, research is essential for the continued expansion of the discipline's knowledge base, the development of spatial understanding, and the improvement in teaching, learning, and practice of architecture. In fact, most sciences, they are doing research to understand and to explain. But the ambition which EAAE shows in this charter is really far-reaching. It's a far-reaching ambition because it's not only about explanation and understanding, it's even about anticipation and changing, influencing the course of change. So, which are the places where such ambitions can be fulfilled? And first I want to point to one of the sites which are generally looked at, which is academic higher education. Architectural education is supposed to be academic, which means level 7 of the European qualification frameworks. Academic education means that it is based upon research. Subsequently, This has been conceptualized as a research teaching nexus. But this nexus is a bit reified in terms of looking for connections with formal scientific academic research conduct. Now, if we are looking for connections with formal scientific academic research conduct in the design studio, which is considered as the backbone of the program, they are absent or scarce. We talk about architectural research in the best case. There is no research teaching nexus, but there is a practice teaching nexus in the studios. So is it research-based or is it design-driven? And if it's design-driven and they should not be research-based, is it then level 7? Does this mean then that architectural design education does not reach level 7? Does it mean that all accreditations are in fact valuing something else or are undeserved? Now, there is another reason why research is important and emphasized in education, not only because it's connected with this level 7 of the European qualification framework, but it's the basis of allocation for funding. And funding is increasingly based upon research performance indicators. In this slide, I show an overall average distribution of publications in the academic repository of a Flemish university. You see journals, you see book publications, you see proceedings, and you see miscellaneous, all the other. I compare it with the publication profile of the cohort of studio teachers, the academic staff of studio teachers in a department in architecture within a faculty university faculty. You have to know that in the context of Flanders, this publication profile is an important parameter for funding. The upper category counts for 10, the others, roughly speaking, for a factor between 1 and 4, and the bottom with the factor 0. Such a 1 to 10 proportion, it's not surprising then that the university dissuades its employers from spending their time in writing texts with another publishing channel than an indexed journal in the Web of Science. Of course, this leads to perverse situations. Frank van der Hoeven, director of the research at the Technical University of Delft, witnesses of the dilemma that academics face. Those who decide not to comply with the academic expectation of publishing disappear from academic esteem and proficiency. Whereas those who decide to publish have at their turn the dilemma either to address their peers by publishing in periodicals which are not indexed and thus not counted, or to publish in indexed academic journals in the fields, but then alienate themselves from their disciplinary peers. This situation is problematic indeed. Increasingly, research and practice are seen as two opposites. In UK, Jeremy Till expressed his concern on behalf of the RIBA in the following terms. He referred to an imaginative dialogue. You are all out of touch with reality, says the practitioner. You are muddied by the market and Philistinism, says the academic. There is an unnecessary antipathy of the one camp to the other, which means that in the end, the worth of research in developing a sustainable knowledge base is devaluated. The situation has even led to resolute rejection of research in the studio. The AA school dedicated its yearly issue, AA Architecture number 18, to the topic of research in the studio. And there we can read this provocation. According to the 21st century most widely consulted backlit manuscript, Wikipedia, the term research was first used in 1577. While its occurrence for the next several hundred years might have been regarded as unusual, today the word is used more frequently than Michael Moore eats McDonald's hamburgers. The last thing that Chris and I would ever want is for one of our students to be researching. We put researching on par with rendering, another self-delusional practice of grandeur or hypertrophic activity akin to poetry or pantomime. Neither Chris nor I could imagine two less compatible tasks than research and design. As Mark said to me the other day, gentlemen don't do research. Now, in contrast to the risk or fear for over-academization, I want to point to another difficulty, which rather points to under-academization. When the model of the so-called modern Western European universities was conceived in the 19th century, with protagonists as von Humboldt and Newman, it were exclusive centers of knowledge production. However, since mass massification of higher education, the institutions have produced huge cohorts of knowledge producers. And knowledge now is produced everywhere. There is a physical sprawl of new knowledge production sites. This has been already written in the 90s by people like Gibbons and Helga Novotny. This diagram shows the transition points in typical academic scientific careers of PhD holders. It shows the flow of scientifically trained people into other sectors. Actually, only 3.5% becomes permanent research staff within academia, and only 1.45% enters a professorship. All the others are disappearing in society in other production fields than knowledge production fields than academia. But what about the field of architecture? Where are those knowledge producers? Actually, what does it mean to have a PhD in architecture, except for an academic career? Which are the actual sites then where architecture knowledge is produced? And what would be the image of the flows of knowledge production for the fields of architecture? Let us now focus on that field of professional practice. Can it be considered as such a landscape of sprawled knowledge production sites? I think the landscape exists, but is still a bit misty. But several promising germs can be seen. Leading architecture offices have started their own corporate research centers. I think the Dutch Office for Metropolitan Architecture started its reverse acronym, AMO. We will also see witnesses, I think, of the Norwegian Office Noheta and Swedish White. They all have developed their own research development centers. Last year, Michael Hensel and Frederick Nilsson published the book, The Changing Shape of Practice, in which they report about the increasing integration of research undertaken in architectural practices of different sizes and all over the world. But also, governmental policy can be helpful. The Creative Industry Fund in the Netherlands, for instance, is founded with the goal, among other goals, to stimulate design research in professional practice. In UK, the implementation of the research and development tax relief, and maybe we will hear more about that in the next lecture, I don't know, provide a tax reduction for SMEs and large companies in exchange for appointing research active personnel. Also in UK, the Research Excellence Framework adopts a very inclusive understanding of research, which allows schools, for instance, to receive research money based on professional production of their practitioner, teachers, in their own office. I show Neil McLaughlin's Bishop Edward Chapel, which was acknowledged as an outcome of some well-articulated research questions. And this project was taken into account by the REF for allocating funding to the institution where this practitioner effectively teaches. But also urban living labs are a fascinating example of how architectural design research engaged with sociologists, with local communities and with other stakeholders, not only to find solutions, but also to gain insights in what works and why what works. Prominent design offices are asked for investigating scenarios for climate change adaptations, new coastal landscapes, prototypes for delta hubs, and so on. So I think these germs exist, but nevertheless there are some difficulties to overcome. I think that culture and tradition of the professions have to change, and I point to one. Some months ago, I was involved in the organization of a workshop about design research in practice, and we launched a call. For this call, there was a simple criterion for selection. Firstly, there should be a thesis, an argument, a statement, an idea. We even didn't ask for a research question. And secondly, there should be something underpinning this thesis, this argument, this statement, or this idea. But when we received the submissions, we could assume that several amongst them are really reporting about interesting practices, and that there must have been some processes which were able to underpin what was shown and what was presented. But nevertheless, many of these submissions only reported how marvelous their work was, no argument, no underpinning, no reliance upon any reasoning. Apparently, there is a need for another type of reflection about what we do, and for cultivating another type of communication and argumentation about what we do and why we do. To conclude, both academia and professional practice are to be acknowledged as places where knowledge is produced and insights emerge. The one needs the other. There is an urgent need for making these processes more visible and to develop ways and platforms for sharing with others, but certainly also among each other. Realizing this new mode of practice is a common duty and a common job. Schools of architecture should find ways to conduct appropriate and proper research. It is research which supports education, educational goals, and research which benefits from being conducted in an educational environment. And thereby, schools must find a way to attract the right researchers to do so. Moreover, they should teach future graduates not only to defend their own projects for clients and juries, as we do now, but also teach them to develop their own practice not only for themselves, but as a source of knowledge and insights valuable for a wider community of fellows and peers. A professional practice should increasingly be aware that it is not only a place of building production, but also a privileged site of knowledge production. It has to develop new ways of sharing insights which emerge from and within the privileged situation of the practitioner. I really believe that sharing practitioners is a self-empowering mechanism which will not only change the perception of the profession, but also demonstrate that architecture is an indispensable partner in coping with contemporary societal challenges. Thank you.